Elena Vasquez stood at the window of her office in New Geneva, looking out at the city that had become the heart of a united Earth. The morning sun painted the sky in soft colors, and she could see people from every continent walking together in the streets below. Children played in parks that once held military bases. Scientists from different countries worked side by side in research centers that used to be separate and secret. It had taken 50 years. But humanity had finally learned to work together. Wars between nations were now just stories in history books. The last soldier had put down his weapon in 2341, when the final border dispute was settled through peaceful talks instead of violence. Elena smiled as she remembered that day. She had been just a young diplomat then, but she knew she was watching history change forever. The world had many problems back then. The air was dirty, the oceans were rising, and millions of people did not have enough food or clean water. But when humans stopped fighting each other and started working together, they fixed these problems faster than anyone thought possible. New machines cleaned the air. Smart farmers grew more food than ever before. Engineers built cities that floated on the rising seas instead of fighting the water. Elena turned away from the window as her assistant, Dr. James Chen, knocked on the door. He was a small man with kind eyes who had been her friend for 20 years. James was the smartest person she knew, and he always helped her make the right choices for Earth. "The morning reports are ready," James said, holding a small tablet. The Mars colony sent their monthly update. They grew enough food to feed everyone and have extra to trade. The moon bases are ahead of schedule building the new solar collectors, and the asteroid mining ships found 3 more sources of rare metals. Elena nodded. Humanity had slowly spread beyond Earth, but they were careful not to rush. They built only what they needed and made sure every new home in space was safe and comfortable. Unlike the old days when countries raced to claim territory, now humans work together to explore the solar system as one family. "What about the signal we detected last week?" Elena asked. James looked excited but also worried. "The computers finished analyzing it this morning. It's definitely from intelligent beings outside our solar system. The signal is very complex, much more advanced than anything we could make. Whoever sent it knows we're here, and they want to talk." Elena felt her heart beat faster. For her whole life, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. But she also felt nervous. What did these alien beings want? Were they friendly or dangerous? "How long before they arrive?" she asked. "The signal suggests they're already on their way," James replied. "Based on the energy readings we detected, their ships could be here within days." "Elena, these beings can travel between stars much faster than we ever imagined possible." Elena walked back to the window. In just a few days, everything would change. Humanity would no longer be alone. She thought about all the progress they had made, all the peace they had built. Would these aliens respect what humans had created? Or would they see Earth as just another world to take over? 3 days later, massive ships appeared in the sky above every major city on Earth. The ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. They looked like they were made of liquid metal that shifted and changed shape as Elena watched. Each ship was larger than the biggest city on Earth, and they moved through the air without making any sound. The aliens did not attack. Instead, they sent a message in perfect human languages to every person on Earth at the same time. The voice was calm and sounded almost bored. "People of Earth, we are the Galactic Confederation. We have been watching your world for some time. Your species has shown interesting progress, especially in recent decades. We offer you membership in our Confederation of Civilized Worlds." Elena gathered with the other world leaders in the emergency council chamber. Everyone looked scared and excited at the same time. They had prepared for this moment, but no one really knew what to expect. The alien message continued. "As a member world, Earth will receive protection from hostile forces and access to advanced technology. In return, you will provide resources and follow Confederation law. A representative will arrive tomorrow to discuss terms with your leaders. Elena felt something cold in her stomach. The aliens spoke like Earth was already theirs to command. They offered protection, but did not ask if humans wanted their protection. They demanded resources, without explaining what that meant. And they expected humans to follow alien laws, without knowing what those laws said. But Elena also knew this was the most important moment in human history. How she handled these talks would decide the future of every person on Earth and in space. She looked around the room at the other leaders. They were all looking at her, waiting for her to speak. "We need to be smart about this," Elena said. "These aliens are much more powerful than us. But that doesn't mean we have to give up our freedom. We've built something good here on Earth. We've learned to live in peace and work together. We can't let anyone, even advanced aliens, destroy that." The next morning, Elena put on her best formal clothes and prepared to meet the alien representative. She did not know that this meeting would be the beginning of the end for everything she loved. As she walked to the meeting room, Elena thought about the children playing in the parks below her office. She thought about the scientists working together to make life better for everyone. She thought about the peaceful world humanity had built together. She would fight to protect all of it, no matter what the cost. The alien representative was not what Elena expected. The being called itself Ambassador Zix and looked almost human, except for its silver skin and eyes that had no color at all. Zix spoke in a voice that never changed tone, as if everything it said was equally unimportant. "Your world has potential," Zix said as they sat in the meeting room. "The Galactic Confederation recognizes Earth as a developing civilization. We offer you junior membership status." Elena listened carefully to every word. James sat beside her, taking notes and watching the aliens' strange expressions. Around the table, the other Earth leaders waited to hear what this junior membership really meant. "What exactly does junior membership include?" Elena asked. Zix made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and empty. "Earth will provide 30% of its metal production, 20% of its food output, and 1% of its population for Confederation service. In return, we will protect you from hostile aliens and share basic technology." The room fell silent. Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "You want us to give you nearly a third of our metals, a fifth of our food, and 10 million of our people? What kind of protection could possibly be worth that price? The kind that keeps your world from being destroyed?" Zix replied. "There are many dangerous species in the galaxy. Without Confederation protection, Earth would not survive 1 year." Elena looked around the table at her fellow leaders. She could see the same thought in all their eyes. These aliens were not offering partnership. They were demanding tribute, like ancient kings demanding payment from conquered villages. "We need time to discuss your offer," Elena said carefully. Zix stood up. Its silver skin seemed to glow brighter for a moment. "You have 1 week to decide. Choose wisely. Rejection of Confederation membership has consequences." After the alien left, Elena and the other leaders talked for hours. Some wanted to accept the alien demands. They argued that humanity was too weak to fight beings who could travel between stars. Others wanted to refuse completely and prepare for war. Elena listened to everyone. But in her heart, she already knew what she had to do. Humanity had not spent 50 years building peace and unity just to become slaves to alien masters. "There has to be another way," she said. "We need to go to their capital world and talk to their leaders directly. Maybe this Ambassador Zix doesn't speak for all of them." James looked worried. "Elena, that could be very dangerous. We don't know anything about their government or their culture." "Then we need to learn," Elena replied. "I'll go to their capital and try to negotiate a better deal. If we're going to join their confederation, it has to be as equals, not as servants." 2 weeks later, Elena stood on the deck of humanity's newest spaceship as it approached Nexus Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Confederation. The planet was enormous, covered in cities that stretched from one horizon to another. Ships from dozens of different alien species moved through the air like schools of fish. The Confederation had given Elena permission to visit and address their ruling council. She had spent the entire journey learning about galactic politics and practicing her speech. James had wanted to come with her, but Elena decided to go alone. If something went wrong, Earth would need James to lead the resistance. The Confederation Capitol building was the largest structure Elena had ever seen. It rose from the planet's surface like a mountain made of crystal and metal. Inside, thousands of aliens from hundreds of different worlds worked together to run the galaxy's government. But as Elena walked through the halls, she began to notice something troubling. The aliens were not all treated equally. Some species, like the tall, pale ethereals and the massive, rock-like titans, seemed to be in charge. Other species, smaller and weaker-looking, hurried through the corridors carrying messages and cleaning floors. Elena realized that the Galactic Confederation was not really a confederation at all. It was an empire ruled by the strongest species, with everyone else serving as workers or soldiers. On the day of her speech, Elena stood before the ruling council in a chamber so large that she could barely see the walls. 12 beings sat on floating platforms high above her, each one representing a different ruling species. Their eyes looked down at her like she was an insect they might choose to step on. Elena began her speech. She talked about humanity's journey from war to peace. She described how humans had learned to work together and take care of their world. She spoke about democracy and freedom and the right of every being to choose their own future. The council listened in silence. Elena could not tell from their expressions whether they were interested or angry. "We want to join the galactic community," Elena said, "but as partners, not as servants. Humanity has much to offer the galaxy, and we believe we can learn much from you. But we will not accept any agreement that makes us slaves." The spendants. She finished her speech and waited. The chamber was so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat. Finally, the lead counselor, a tall ethereal with glowing blue skin, spoke. "Your words are interesting, human. We will consider your proposal." Elena felt hopeful for the first time since arriving at Nexus Prime. Maybe she had convinced them. Maybe humanity could find a place in the galaxy without giving up their freedom. That night, Elena was invited to a formal ceremony celebrating galactic unity. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered in a massive hall to eat strange foods and listen to speeches about cooperation between species. Elena was asked to speak again. She stood at a podium in the center of the hall, with cameras recording her words to broadcast across the entire galaxy. She spoke about hope and friendship between different worlds. She talked about her dream of a galaxy where every species could grow and prosper together. "We stand at the beginning of a new age," Elena said. "An age when the barriers between worlds can finally come down, when every being can reach for the stars, knowing they are not alone." As she spoke, Elena felt something was wrong. The council members, who had seemed interested in her earlier speech, now looked cold and distant. Some of them were not even listening to her words. Elena continued speaking, but she began to notice strange movements in the shadows around the hall. Security guards were moving into different positions. The exits were being quietly blocked. Then Elena saw it. A shape moving behind her that cast no shadow. A figure that seemed to bend light around itself. She tried to turn, but something struck her in the back with the force of lightning. Pain exploded through Elena's body as alien technology tore through her cells. She fell to the floor, her vision going dark. But her neural implant was still working, still broadcasting her thoughts to Earth. With her last breath, Elena sent one final message to her people. "Remember who we are. Remember what we can become together." The assassin, a phase-shifting Vorthak warrior, materialized fully as Elena died. The council members nodded in satisfaction. They believed they had just solved the human problem by removing the one leader who held their species together. They had no idea how wrong they were. James Chen stood in Elena's empty office, staring at the chair where she used to sit every morning. The news of her death had reached Earth 12 hours ago, and the world had not stopped crying since. Every screen on the planet showed the same terrible image: Elena falling to the floor as the alien assassin struck her down. But something strange was happening. James had expected riots and panic. He had thought the world governments would fall apart without Elena to hold them together. Instead, something else was growing in the streets of every city on Earth. People were not fighting each other. They were coming together. Millions of humans gathered in public spaces, holding candles and sharing memories of their fallen leader. They sang songs Elena had loved and repeated her speeches, word for word. The phrase, "Remember Elena," appeared on walls and windows in every language humans had ever spoken. James walked to the window and looked down at the crowd that had gathered in the plaza below. There were people from every nation, every culture, every background. They stood together in perfect silence, united by their grief and something else that James was only beginning to understand. Elena's funeral was held 3 days later. Every human being on Earth, on Mars, on the Moon, and on the asteroid stations stopped what they were doing to watch. 8 billion people mourned together as Elena's body was laid to rest in the soil of the world she had died trying to protect. The Alien Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought Elena was the source of humanity's unity. They believed that killing her would break the human spirit and make Earth easier to control. They did not understand that Elena was not the cause of human unity. She was the result of it. James stood at the podium where Elena should have been standing. His hands shook as he looked out at the largest gathering of human beings in history. Every face in the crowd looked back at him with the same expression. They were ready to fight. The Galactic Confederation killed Elena Vasquez because they were afraid of her, James said. His voice carried to every corner of the world through cameras and satellites. They were afraid of her words about freedom and equality. They were afraid of her dream of a galaxy where every species could choose its own path. The crowd listened in absolute silence. James could feel their anger, like heat from a fire. Elena knew this might happen, James continued. Before she left for Nexus Prime, she gave me a sealed order. She told me to open it only if she did not return alive. James held up a small data pad. His finger hovered over the activation button. Elena's final order to humanity is this: if the galaxy wants war, we will give them war they will never forget. James pressed the button. All across the solar system, hidden facilities began to wake up. Factories that had been disguised as research centers started building weapons. Mining stations that had been collecting metals for peaceful construction began forging armor plating. Scientists who had been working on energy research activated reactors that could power weapons beyond alien imagination. Elena had seen this day coming. While she worked for peace, she had also prepared for war. The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's insurance policy, a secret program that turned every piece of human technology into a potential weapon. The aliens had no idea what they had unleashed. Dr. Sarah Martinez had been Elena's personal bodyguard for 10 years. She was a former military officer who had put down her weapons when the wars ended, but she had never forgotten how to fight. Now she stood in a secret facility deep under the Rocky Mountains, looking at humanity's answer to galactic tyranny. The shipyard stretched for miles underground. 50 massive vessels hung in the darkness, each one the size of a city. They did not look like the sleek alien ships humanity had seen at Nexus Prime. These ships looked like fortresses built to survive the end of the universe. "How long to complete the fleet?" Sarah asked the chief engineer. "The ships are already finished," the engineer replied. "We've been building them in secret for 5 years. Elena wanted us to be ready for this day, even though she hoped it would never come. Sarah walked up to the nearest ship and placed her hand on its hull. The metal felt warm, almost alive. Inside each vessel was technology that the aliens had never seen before. While they built millions of small, fast ships, humanity had built 50 moving fortresses that could each destroy an entire enemy fleet. "What about crews?" Sarah asked. "Every person in this facility volunteered to stay and fight," the engineer said. "We have enough volunteers to crew all 50 ships twice over. Everyone wants to make the aliens pay for what they did to Elena." Sarah nodded. She understood. Elena had been more than just Earth's leader. She had been the symbol of everything good that humanity could become. Her death had not broken that symbol. It had made it eternal. 3 months after Elena's assassination, reports began reaching the Galactic Confederation about problems in the outer sectors. 17 different worlds had begun rebelling against Confederation rule. The rebels all carried the same symbol. A simple white flag, with Elena's words written in their own languages. "Remember who we are." Elena's speeches, broadcast across the galaxy during her visit to Nexus Prime, had reached the ears of species who had been living under alien rule for centuries. Her words about freedom and democracy had planted seeds in minds that had never imagined such things were possible. The Confederation Council was furious. They had killed the human leader to prevent exactly this kind of uprising. Now, Elena's death had inspired more rebellion than her life ever could have. "Deploy the Fourth Fleet," ordered the lead counselor. "Crush these rebels before their foolishness spreads to other worlds." But as the alien fleets moved to stop the rebellions, their long-range sensors detected something that made no sense. 50 massive energy signatures were moving out of the Sol system toward Confederation space. The readings were impossible. No ships that large should be able to move that fast. Admiral Kex of the Fourth Fleet studied the sensor data with growing confusion. "These readings must be wrong," he told his science officer. "Those ships are showing power levels equivalent to small stars." "The readings are confirmed, Admiral," the science officer replied. 50 objects, each approximately 10 kilometers in length, moving at 0.8 light speed toward our position. Admiral Kex laughed. 50 ships against our entire fleet? The humans are even more foolish than we thought. Prepare the battle formations. We'll destroy these primitive vessels and then glass their homeworld as an example to other would-be rebels. The Admiral had no way of knowing that those 50 ships carried weapons that could unmake reality itself. He had no idea that humanity had spent the last 3 months turning their grief into something that would reshape the galaxy forever. High above Earth, Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the stars grow closer. She wore Elena's personal communicator on her uniform, and she could still hear her friend's last words echoing in her memory. "All ships report ready for combat," her communications officer announced. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Signal the Confederation fleet. Tell them we're coming. Tell them Elena Vasquez sends her regards." Admiral Kex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, watching the approaching human vessels through his tactical display. His Fourth Fleet contained 10,000 of the Confederation's best warships, each one crewed by experienced warriors who had crushed dozens of rebellions across the galaxy. The human fleet looked pathetic by comparison. Only 50 ships against his mighty armada. Kex had fought battles where the enemy brought 100 times more vessels, and still lost badly. These humans clearly did not understand how galactic warfare worked. "Admiral, the human ships are not responding to our warnings to surrender," his communications officer reported. Kex made a sound of disgust. "Typical primitive behavior. They think their crude weapons can match Confederation technology. Signal all ships to attack formation. We'll end this quickly and send their wreckage back to Earth as a message." But as the human fleet drew closer, something began to worry Kex's science officers. The energy readings from the human ships were not just large, they were impossible. Each vessel was generating more power than his entire fleet combined. "Admiral," the chief science officer said, his voice shaking slightly, "those power readings can't be correct. No ship can contain that much energy without being destroyed." Kex looked at the readings and frowned. The numbers made no sense. But he had seen sensor errors before. Primitive civilizations often used crude technology that confused Confederation equipment. "Ignore the sensor ghosts," Kex ordered. "Prepare to fire all weapons on my command." On the bridge of the human flagship, Sarah Martinez watched the alien fleet arrange itself for battle. The Confederation ships moved in perfect formations, like dancers who had performed the same routine thousands of times. They were beautiful and deadly, and there were so many of them they blocked out the stars. Sarah touched Elena's communicator on her uniform and spoke into the ship's communication system. "All human vessels. This is Admiral Martinez. In a few minutes, we're going to show these aliens what happens when they murder our leaders and threaten our freedom." Elena Vasquez died believing in a better galaxy, a place where all species could live in peace. Sarah paused, thinking of her friend's last words. "Remember, Elena. Remember who we are. Remember what we fight for. All ships, engage reality anchors on my mark." Reality anchors were humanity's first surprise for the aliens. The devices created fields that made faster-than-light travel impossible within a large area of space. No ship could escape once the battle began. The Confederation fleet would have to stand and fight. "Reality anchors active," reported Sarah's tactical officer. "All enemy vessels are trapped in local space." Admiral Kex felt his first moment of real concern when his navigation officer announced that the fleet's jump drives had stopped working. "Admiral, something is preventing faster than light travel. All ships report the same problem." "That's impossible," Kex said. "No known technology can create a field that large." But before he could think about the implications, the human ships opened fire. What came from the human vessels was not laser beams or plasma bolts or any weapon the Confederation had ever seen. It was something that ate space itself, tunnels of absolute darkness that reached across the void and touched the alien ships. The effect was instant and horrifying. When the darkness touched a Confederation vessel, the ship did not explode or break apart. It simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, and the next moment, there was empty space where it had been. In the space of 4.7 seconds, the entire Fourth Fleet was gone. 10,000 ships and their crews vanished as if they had never existed at all. Admiral Kex had just enough time to send one final message to Confederation headquarters before his own ship was consumed by the darkness. "The humans have weapons that unmake reality itself. Send everything we have, or we're all going to die." The message reached Nexus Prime 3 days later, carried by an automated probe that had witnessed the battle from a safe distance. The Confederation Council watched the battle recording in stunned silence. "This must be some kind of trick," said Counselor Vex, a massive titan whose species had ruled part of the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. "No primitive civilization could develop such weapons." "The battle recording is confirmed authentic," replied the head of Confederation Intelligence. "We've analyzed it, with every detection method available. Those ships were completely destroyed, erased from existence across multiple dimensional layers." The lead counselor, an ancient ethereal named Zar, studied the tactical data with growing horror. The Confederation had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years by having the strongest weapons and the largest fleets. Now they faced an enemy with 50 ships that could destroy anything they sent against it. "How many ships do we have in total?" Zar asked. 53 million active vessels," the intelligence chief replied, "plus reserve fleets and planetary defense forces." Zar felt something he had not experienced in centuries: fear. But he pushed it aside. The Confederation had not conquered the galaxy by running from fights. Mobilize everything, Tsar ordered. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. If the humans want to challenge the natural order of the galaxy, we'll show them why we've ruled for 10 millennia. Within days, the largest military force in galactic history was moving toward human space. Ships from 1,000 different worlds, representing hundreds of alien species, all united under Confederation command. The fleet was so large that it took 6 hours for the last ships to leave their staging areas after the first ones had already jumped to hyperspace. Sarah Martinez stood in the observation deck of her flagship, watching the human fleet prepare for the coming battle. 50 ships against 53 million. The numbers should have been terrifying. But Sarah felt only calm determination. Elena had known this day would come. She had prepared humanity for this moment. Not just with weapons and ships, but with something more important. The absolute certainty that they were fighting for the right cause. "Admiral, Confederation forces are approaching the outer system," her tactical officer announced. Estimated enemy strength: 53 million vessels of various classes. Sarah nodded. "Signal all ships. Activate the Prometheus weapons. It's time to show the galaxy what humans can do when you threaten everything we love." The Prometheus weapons were humanity's ultimate creation. Devices that converted matter directly into energy and fed that energy back into the ship's systems. Each kill would make the human ships stronger, faster, and more deadly. Sarah opened a channel to the entire Confederation fleet. Her words would be heard by every alien warrior in the approaching armada. "My name is Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Terran Defense Force. You killed our leader, Elena Vasquez, because you were afraid of her words about freedom and peace. You thought her death would break our spirit. Instead, you have awakened something in humanity that you cannot understand and cannot defeat." Sarah paused, letting her words sink in. "You have 6 days to surrender unconditionally and release all the species you have enslaved. If you refuse, we will remove you from the galaxy permanently. This is your only warning." The only response from the Confederation fleet was laughter transmitted over open channels. 50 ships against 53 million. The aliens thought the humans had gone insane with grief. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sarah smiled as she watched the massive enemy fleet approaching. In her mind, she could hear Elena's voice from their last conversation. "All ships," Sarah said into her communicator. "Remember Elena. Let's bring her vision to the galaxy. One dead tyrant at a time." The war that would reshape the galaxy began at exactly 1432 Galactic Standard Time on the 6th day after Sarah's ultimatum. The Confederation fleet, spread across light years of space in the largest military formation ever assembled, moved forward to destroy the 50 human ships that dared to challenge their empire. Admiral Tsar commanded the attack from his flagship, a massive dreadnought that had never lost a battle in 3,000 years of service. Around him, millions of alien warriors prepared to crush the human rebellion and restore the natural order of galactic dominance. "All ships, begin the attack," Tsar commanded. "Show these primitives the price of defying the Confederation." The alien fleet opened fire with enough weapons to sterilize entire solar systems. Energy beams and missile swarms that could crack planets filled the space between the two forces. It was the most devastating display of military power the galaxy had ever seen. But when the light faded and the weapon signatures cleared, all 50 human ships remained exactly where they had been. Not one had been damaged. Not one had even moved from its position. "Impossible," Tsar whispered. "Nothing can survive that level of firepower." On the human flagship, Sarah watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Confederation attack had been absorbed by humanity's shield technology, converted into pure energy and stored in the ship's power cores. Each alien shot had actually made the human vessels stronger. "All ships, return fire," Sarah ordered. What emerged from the human fleet was not the reality-eating darkness they had used against the Fourth Fleet. This time, they deployed something even more terrifying. Weapons that learned and adapted with each shot. The first wave of human fire destroyed 10,000 Confederation ships instantly. But as the weapons struck their targets, they analyzed the alien shields and armor, learning how to penetrate them more effectively. The second wave destroyed 50,000 ships. The third wave consumed 100,000. With each attack, the human weapons became more deadly, while the alien defenses became more useless. The Confederation fleet, despite its massive size, began dying at an ever-increasing rate. Admiral Czar watched his forces disappear from the tactical display like lights going out across a city during a blackout. "All ships, retreat! Retreat immediately!" But there was nowhere to run. The reality anchors still prevented faster than light travel, and the human ships were faster than anything the Confederation had ever built. Sarah's fleet moved through the alien formation like wolves among sheep, destroying everything they touched. The battle lasted 6 days, just as Sarah had predicted. On the first day, the Confederation lost 3 million ships. On the second day, they lost 8 million more. By the fourth day, entire sectors of their fleet had simply vanished. On the sixth day, Admiral Czar's flagship was the last Confederation vessel still fighting. Sarah's ship approached the crippled alien dreadnought slowly, its weapons powered, but not firing. She opened a communication channel to the dying vessel. "Admiral Czar, this is Admiral Martinez. Do you surrender?" Czar's image appeared on Sarah's screen. The proud alien leader looked broken and confused, unable to understand how his mighty empire had been destroyed so quickly. "How?" Czar asked. "How did 50 ships defeat 53 million? Sarah looked at the alien who had helped plan Elena's murder, and her voice was cold as deep space. "Because we were fighting for something worth dying for, and you were fighting to keep others enslaved. Elena Vasquez taught us that free people will always defeat tyrants in the end." Czar bowed his head in defeat. "I surrender." The Confederation surrenders unconditionally. But Sarah was not finished. The human fleet had not come just to defeat the Confederation's military. They had come to change the galaxy forever. Within weeks, human ships appeared in orbit around every Confederation world. But instead of conquest, they brought liberation. Species that had been enslaved for thousands of years were told they were free to govern themselves. Worlds that had been forced to send tribute to Nexus Prime were informed that those payments were now forbidden. Sarah stood in the former Confederation Council chamber, now renamed the Hall of Liberation. Representatives from 400 different species filled the seats where the 12 ruling counselors had once sat in judgment. These beings had never been allowed to speak in their own government before. Now, they were the government. The transformation was not easy. Many species did not know how to be free after generations of slavery. Some worlds fell into chaos as old grievances erupted into violence. But human advisors, trained in Elena's principles of democracy and cooperation, helped these worlds find their way to peace. Other species tried to take advantage of the Confederation's collapse to build their own empires. These attempts were stopped quickly by human patrol fleets that now guarded the galaxy's trade routes and borders. The former Confederation Council members were given trials for their crimes. Some were executed for the millions of deaths they had caused. Others were exiled to remote worlds where they could spend their remaining years thinking about their sins. A few, those who showed genuine regret, were allowed to join the new government as advisors. 1 year after Elena's death, Sarah stood before a memorial statue that had been erected in the center of New Geneva, the capital of the new Galactic Republic that had grown from Elena's vision. The statue showed Elena as she had been in life, confident, compassionate, and looking toward the stars with hope. Children from dozens of different species played around the statue's base, learning together in schools that taught the history of freedom and the importance of standing up to tyrants. Their parents worked side by side in businesses and governments that Elena had only dreamed of. Dr. James Chen, now the elected president of the Galactic Republic, stood beside Sarah as they watched the children play. "Do you think Elena would be proud of what we've built?" he asked. Sarah smiled, remembering her friend's last words. "She's here with us, James. Every time someone stands up to a bully, every time a free vote is cast, every time children from different worlds play together, without fear, Elena is there." Above them, human ships patrolled the space between worlds, their weapons ready to defend the freedom that Elena had died to give to the galaxy. The ships were no longer instruments of war. They were guardians of peace, making sure that no species would ever again kneel before tyrants. In the years that followed, the galaxy prospered as it never had before. Trade flourished between free worlds. Science advanced as species shared knowledge instead of hoarding secrets. Art and culture bloomed as beings who had been forbidden to express themselves finally found their voices. And in the center of it all, Elena's words continued to echo across the stars. "Remember who we are. Remember what we can become. Together." The galaxy had tried to silence her voice by killing her. Instead, they had given her message the power to live forever in the hearts of every free being in the universe. Elena Vasquez was dead, but her dream had become reality. The galaxy belonged to the free now. And humanity stood watch to make sure it stayed that way. Sarah's final log entry, recorded 50 years after the liberation, would be studied by historians for generations to come. Elena once told me that the strongest weapon in the universe is not a gun or a bomb, but an idea whose time has come. The idea of freedom came to the galaxy in Elena's words, and no force in the universe could stop it. Today, children are born free on 1,000 worlds, because one human woman believed that freedom was worth any sacrifice. We remember Elena. We remember who we are, and we will never forget.